Kwe, hello. I'm Mari Brockpay, and I work for Indigenous Theater at the National Arts Center. I'm an Algonquin Anishinaabe from Gittigan-Zibi First Nation, and I would like to recognize that I am here on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, as are both the National Arts Center and the Ottawa Public Library, who have joined together in this partnership for this series. I would also like to honor the land, the snow outside today, and our ancestors, past, present, and future, for taking care of both us and the land. I would also like to recognize all the territories and treaties from where all of our viewers are coming from today. It's great to have you here with us, and I hope you enjoy the evening. Miigwech.
Good evening. Bonsoir à tous et à toutes. My name is Kathy Fisher, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Ottawa Public Library Board. It's a pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Ottawa Public Library to this first session of our Stories Indigenous Book Club. Each month, we will highlight recently published works from Indigenous authors across Turtle Island. The library is delighted to be partnering with the National Arts Center Indigenous Theatre. We also thank our supporters, the Friends of the Ottawa Public Library Association, the Slate Family Foundation, and TD's The Ready Commitment for helping to make this series possible. Tonight, we are absolutely thrilled to have Yolanda Bonnell with us. Yolanda is a queer Two-Spirit Ojibwe, South Asian performer, playwright, and poet from Fort William First Nation in Thunder Bay, Ontario, located in Superior Robinson Treaty Territory. She's now based in Takaranto, or Toronto. Yolanda's Dora-nominated solo Showbug had its world premiere at the Luminado Festival in 2018, followed by a national tour and a remount at Theatre Pass Muraille in February 2020. Yolanda was also part of Factory Theatre's The Foundry, a creation program for new career writers where her play Scanner continues to be workshopped towards production. Bug is a solo performance and artistic ceremony that highlights the ongoing effects of colonialism and intergenerational trauma experienced by Indigenous women. It's also a testament to women's resilience and strength. The Ottawa Public Library is delighted to bring you remarkable stories and people that can inspire and challenge us to all explore different perspectives. Coming in February are programs on Black History Month and the next session of our stories with the work entitled Performing Turtle Island. Head to the library website for more information on those events. Thank you and enjoy the evening. Bonne soirée à tous.
Oh, Anin, bonjour. Jill Carter Nadishnikas. Anishinaabe Aqua Ashkenazi Kwayandao, Dagaronto Nudunjaba, Kinumage Kwayandao. My name is Jill Carter. I'm a mixed blood Anishinaabe and Ashkenazi woman. I'm speaking to you from Dagaronto, that place where the trees grow out of the water on the banks of Ontario, the beautiful lake. This place has been stewarded by and has sustained multiple nations, including the Erie, the Petun, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, specifically the Cayuga, Mohawk, and Seneca nations, and most recently the Mississauga Anishinaabe. I'd also like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you via a computer over a platform called Zoom, and platforms such as Zoom and Skype have set their headquarters in California, which is the traditional territories of the Muwekma Ohlone peoples. And for me, it is very important to remember that the lands through which these pipelines that carry our images and voices to each other have been dug, the lands from which rare earth elements required to make the machineries through which we speak to each other have been extracted, that all of those lands, we owe a debt to the lives that have been taken and given, to the lives that will continue to be compromised because of our landfill and the extraction, and also the lives that continue to be spent often in unsafe and inhuman working conditions to create these machineries so that we have cheap and easy access to these things. So I say this because I want to remember for myself not to take these gifts for granted, to take these sacrifices for granted, and to remind myself that tonight, as with every day and every night, I must try to use this for the good. I am so excited that we are using this for the good tonight and talking to a wonderful artist, healer, teacher, just an incredible woman. Okay, I've got to stop fangirling. I'm a little too old to be a fangirl, but here I am doing it. Sorry. But this wonderful, wonderful artist whom I've had the opportunity to see as a performer, not only in her incredible bug, which we are talking about tonight, but also in The Unnatural and Accidental Woman not so long ago at the NAC, and at the wonderful language operas, Two Odysseys, and I can say the Cree word, Pimotiwen, but I can't say the Sami title for the Sami opera that was there, so please excuse me. I'm going to allow Yolanda, and I thank her for being here to talk to me, and I thank the Ottawa Public Library and the NAC for inviting me to speak with Yolanda. I say chi miigwech to all of you for being here tonight. And then I'm going to pass it over to Yolanda, who would like to introduce herself.
Miigwech, Jill, for all of your teachings, especially the land teachings are really important right now. Miigwech for that. Ani, everyone, Yolanda Nindishnikas, Gijiba Maenga Nindigo Jibwemang Makwa Nindodam, Fort William First Nation Nindonjaba, Dagarando Ninda. My name is Yolanda Vanel. Miigwech for being here tonight. For us to talk about this play. I'm really honored to be here to have this discussion. So if you have any questions, please have them coming in, and Jill and I are just gonna have a little quay chat and see what happens. So miigwech again for being here. Thanks.
So in preparation for tonight, Yolanda, I went through the published script, and congratulations. This 4 times Dora nominated play is out there in publication. So fabulous, wonderful. There's the cover. It's a gorgeous cover too.
Chief Ladybird.
Yeah. So it's so beautiful to be out there. So, and it was so good to read. I mean, you're so kind to your readers. You just offer so many thoughts and so many keys to things. So riffing on your notes on decolonizing theater, you write that you are interested in finding out what other ways theater can exist. And I know that you have implemented some of these ways as you were developing, producing, and touring Bug. And tonight I'm going to ask you if you will speak about some of those alternate ways that you have implemented and where you hope to go next as you progress through your project of dismantling the colonial structure that is theater, as it has always been.
Miigwech. Yeah, I feel like it really began, as I say in the note, not too long after graduating and sort of being thrust into the industry and seeing everything. I began working with Michif artist Cole Alvis, who we began working, we were paired together at Wasagachek. And so there was something about the way that we sort of ran those rehearsals. We spent a lot of time getting to know each other and talking and checking in with each other. And that was already an alternative way of, rehearsing. And so I think it was important for me as my own artist and for us as a collective, as we formed Manadoons, to implement those same sort of strategies into every space that we were in. And so for me, it's about, the check-ins are one of the most important things. And when I worked with Kim Sunclip Harvey and the Coast Salish territory, she also implements these check-ins at the beginning of every rehearsal or anytime we're gathered in space. And so for us, it's a way of sort of seeing where everyone is at. This idea of leaving your baggage or your shit at the door, and when you come into a room, like, it's just not real. No one's ever been able to do it. And if you can, like, good on you. But not everyone is able to do that. So I want to say, I invite you in with your baggage, invite you in with your shit. Let's sit in a circle. Who are you? Where are you from? How are you feeling today? Put it into the space so that we can all hold it together, so that we all know how to be in space and in relation with each other. So, which all of that sort of basic underline is of care, right? Of approaching everything with the basis of care in mind, because I think that there is a severe lack of care and compassion in the industry, and so I was more interested in how can we inject care into everything that we're doing. So check-ins were a part of that. We also have shorter rehearsal days, shorter rehearsal weeks, understanding that everybody has different lives that they have to live. And so often we're putting, work first, we're putting career first. It's like, oh, you have to get this done. I have to work overtime. I have to work. This like capitalist mentality has like seeped its way into our storytelling. And so I'm looking at how can we sort of melt those things away and work from like a more of a generous place of, well, look, if you're a single parent or a parent, we're not going to keep you till like, especially for a technician, you're there till you're working 14-hour days sometimes. So how can we shorten those rehearsal times and things like that? So there's are a couple of ways that we're just sort of starting like with those small, like implementing those small sort of steps, just in that, in those small little microcosms and ways that we can work in rehearsal space. Other ways that I've started is with my negotiations with institutions. I'm looking at living documents, living relationship agreements that the contract is not just there to protect the institution, but that we're finding ways of working with our agreements that are more traditional. How are we, I'm talking about like bringing in value system, holding accountability for care, things like that, holding talking circles, bringing in Indigenous values to any agreement that I have with institutions, so that we know that we're at least starting off in a good way. Have a lot of trust issues with institutions, so it's slowly finding our way into these ways of agreement so that we can keep each other safe.
I'm interested in asking you, what have you met with resistance or openness? How have people, I don't know, they could be the funding bodies, they could be the theater space itself and that infrastructure, the techs and whomever. How how have these institutions you're working with reacted to the things you are implementing? For instance, the shorter rehearsal day, but perhaps the longer rehearsal period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for the most people have been quite open about it. I think because they can sense the change coming, or they can feel that especially now, they may not have been as open prior to the conversations that we've been having this last year. But I think more and more that we're sort of, now that we've exposed that capitalism doesn't work, it's sort of, now we can go, look, okay, so there are other ways of working and other ways of doing this. And I think most people are quite receptive to it, as long as there are ways of finding the funding, because it always comes down to funding. And so, trying to manage negotiating ways through that. But I think people have been quite open for the most part. I think that there are some folks that do a lot of lip service. There's a lot of, we'll talk about how we're interested, and then when it comes down to it, aren't there. And there are some institutions that are that did not agree with some of the decisions that we've made. Last, I don't even know what it is anymore. Last year when we did Bug at TPM, we made the request of that only BIPOC reviewers, specifically Indigenous women, were hired to review the show. And that was met with an incredible amount of resistance from media outlets and from white reviewers. They did not like being left out. And then I was also met with a lot of backlash because I was the one interviewed for it, and the internet turned against me. So, you can see some changes on some ends for people who genuinely want to try to see change, and then there are people that are scared. I don't even want to say don't want to do it, because it's not about not wanting to do it. It's about being scared. And it's about not wanting to lose something, whether it's their patrons or, specific audience members and things like that. So, yeah, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, but there have been a lot of positive responses, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's an important point you made, the fear.
Yeah.
The fear. What do you think in this moment, being where you've been and seeing what you're seeing, what do you think in this moment are perhaps the most urgent practices, or the most immediate practices that institutions, whether they are theaters, whether they are training grounds, or whether they are funding bodies, might adopt to build on whatever the good work that you're doing and others are doing, but to really build on that work to ensure the safety of Indigenous, Black, and artists of color. And I ask this because, I am kind of old. And even before my time, there's a history before me. And, I look back at my mentors. I look at what my mentors coming before me have done, people like Muriel Miguel, Spider Woman Theater. And I look at, and I know this history, and I know all of the people, all of the years. I'll speak right now for Indigenous artists, all of the years that we have really struggled and sort of banged on those doors and said, we should be here. Our stories belong here on these stages. We've banged on, and then they opened the stage door in many they've started to open these stage doors in many of the big established theaters. But it feels to me that not everybody, but many of the Indigenous artists who now, after, 2-3 generations of banging on the door, have stepped in and run right back out again. So this is not safe. And, it's fairly public knowledge. I mean, many artists have come right out very publicly. I'm seeing it in institutions. I work at the University of Toronto, but I'm seeing it all around, hearing it from Indigenous students all over, particularly in theater departments, Indigenous, Black, and students of color. So right in the training grounds, I'm hearing, I'm not safe. This is not safe. This is not. So I guess I'm asking you as a young person, what do you think? What is the next thing they should be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first, I also want to add on and acknowledge that none of us that are doing this work now would not have been able to do this work had it not been for the work that you and Miriam Legal and Monique Mojica have done before us. I know and recognize that particularly Indigenous matriarchs have done a lot of this work, banging on those doors for years. And so I need to say that because it's so incredibly important to recognize all of that work and all of that struggle, and that there is still work and that there is still struggle, but that there's a lot of changes that have happened, I think, over the last however many years. And running right back, turning around and running away makes total sense to me. Like, I mean, again, Kim Senclip-Harvey talks about, she quit acting because she was tired of dying and crying on stage, because all of our stories were trauma based, and that was the only way we could get in the door, was by sharing our trauma. That was all anyone was ever interested in. And I think that there's still some of that now, but it is shifting. I think it honestly is a shift in thinking. It's not even at its very core. We can talk for days about physical changes and hiring more people of color and bringing those people in and institution and implementing aspects of care, but it honestly takes a shift of thinking. It has to come from a genuine place of wanting that change and seeing the need for that change, seeing the need for care as a basic component of storytelling, that it's less about profit and less about making that money and bringing that in, and more about the story itself and the people who are telling the story. I mean, there are always going to be, I think, difference of opinions on this. And honestly, I don't have any of the answers. Any answer that I ever give for anything, I'm always doing from my heart. It's always coming from a place in my spirit that feels right. And for me, I think having care and compassion as a basis or a foundation on which we begin to tell these stories or begin to engage or be in space with each other, that the only way to go from there is up. If we're coming in from this place of care, at least we're starting off in a good way, and then we can talk about what it takes to build it from there. It's one of the things I say in the thing that I wrote in the book about decolonizing, is that dismantling is messy business. Taking things apart and is messy, and we don't have all the answers to put it back together yet, but that's what this time is for, so that we can look at each other and go pick up this piece and go, does this fit anywhere? Do we need this anymore? Do we need reviewers anymore or whatever it is? Do we have a discussion about it? No. Okay, good, it's gone. Let's as a community, and there are different communities within the theater community, talk about what that means. One of the things I I talk about is about indigenizing spaces. And I'm not interested in indigenizing spaces. I'm not interested in indigenizing every space I come into, you know? But what I am interested in is demonstrating other ways of things of working. And those happen to be, for me, deeply indigenous practices. And I'm, you know, I'm coming in and I'm showing, and I'm like, this is the way we do things. Maybe you too can implement some of these so that you're keeping other people safe. Because we're the whole point is that we're trying to keep people safe as best as we can. And if we're starting from a place where money is the top priority, then you're immediately not keeping people safe, because every decision you're making is coming from a place of profit at the expense of people's mental health and physical health. I don't know if that answered the question. Shift of
Amazing. You know, I have to acknowledge and applaud you for that remarkably courageous act of asking white reviewers not to review Bug. You know, for a long time, I mean, even when I was young, although I was too cowardly and wouldn't have dared, but, you know, I always wondered and wondered about this practice and did not think it was the healthiest to have an expert come to a show one night, walk away with their expert opinion, and decide the life or death of that show, or the value of that show to a multiplicity of communities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Beyond their own,
Yeah.
as you know, generally the white expert, white male expert.
Yeah.
And I always wondered about that. I thought, could there not be another model? Could there not be dialogue? Could there not be people interested in the development? I mean, you know, I think of my role, because part of my role, I'm a theater maker, but I'm also an academic. And I think part of my role as an academic is to help when asked and where I can, with whatever resources I can get through my position, you know, within an academic institution, help development, right? Not judge whether it's worthy of development or what it's done, but let the people, the community for whom this is being made, be the judge of that.
Yeah.
But be there to aid that development, and so hopefully aid the community. I'm sorry, I've gone off.
No,
I
no.
also,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. A part of the thing, like, part of what was happening was that there are a series of problematic reviews that were coming out, that were racist and transphobic, and they were, you know, and there's been a history of reviews on culturally specific theater that have been incredibly problematic. And so, you know, and no one said it. Of course we didn't say anything, right? Because that's, again, like I say, that's the way it's always been. So nobody questions it. So there was a bunch in a row that happened. And there was even a problematic review for Bug when it happened at Luminato. And it was just a case of like, I think that we need to have a discussion about this, because we didn't want the ceremony, which, for, you know, I think of Bug, especially that version of it, was really, for me, a ceremony. It didn't feel right. And then there were all these other on top of it. Who are these white people that are coming to the show and are gonna like sit there and tear apart these ceremonial aspects of it? And also, where are the Indigenous reviewers? Also, where are the Black reviewers? Also, where are the other reviewers of color? Like, where are they? Because we didn't see them. So really, it was like a call out to media outlets to be like, hire brown people, like hire Black people, hire people of color, because you're coming to these shows with your white lens, you have no idea some of the things that we're talking about, yet you're commenting on them, and then you're putting these like these specific spins on them that are incredibly problematic. One of the reviewers who wrote a review anyway and then sent it to me and wanted me to tell her where she was being racist. And I was like, no. Are you gonna pay me? Like what? So I mean, and part of the and it was and the review was problematic for many reasons. There were the language used around Manadunes, the character in the show, was, you know, words like evil and demon, like these Christianized words. Like people don't white people don't understand microaggressions the same way people of color do. And so if you're putting in a problematic microaggression into a review, you are causing harm to that community. And you might not even know it because that's not your lens, that's not your view on life, because you don't have our lived experiences. So there, you know, there were and it was funny because when I told my friend what we were doing, she was like, so like, I can't believe you're doing that. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I was like, it'll be fine, like no one's gonna care about this little. No, it became a big deal. And
It's huge. It's historic.
and I think sometimes I feel like things that are historic, or things that become these big deals, don't start out that way, or are not intended to be that way. Like I'm like, can we just give an Indigenous woman a job, for God's sakes? And they're like, you know, and then everybody attacked me and called me racist, and I was like, I'm what? Yeah.
Before I move on, I've been asked to make a note here. So I'm going to make two notes. It's 7:32 and we're scheduled to finish this presentation, this discussion at 8. And I've been asked to remind people who are listening in to us that Jill doesn't have to be the only one with questions. Jill's got a lot, but Jill's not here to monopolize a conversation. So if there are things you'd like to say to Yolanda, if there are questions you'd love to ask Yolanda, I've been asked to tell you this. And because I'm such a social media dweeb, that is, I don't do it, I'm going to read off the chat. We will have a question period at the end. We invite you to ask your questions by leaving a comment on Facebook. And then, as I understand it, our wonderful organizers will relay those questions to me in the Zoom, and then I can give them voice to Yolanda. So please do. Already a question has come up. I think I'll ask this question now. I won't save it, and then we can continue. So this question comes from Nancy. Will Bug be performed in Ottawa soon?
There are no plans right now. Obviously, any production for it has stopped right now due to the pandemic. And because the show is so intimate, I feel like it's going to need some time before we can get this one back into spaces. The circle, if anyone, for anyone who hasn't seen it, there it all takes place in the round in a circle. For many reasons. Circles are quite sacred, and it also represents the cycle of trauma, but also, or intergenerational trauma, but also being held in a ceremonial circle of safety. So the witnesses are quite close to me, and I'm basically was sitting with them and like in their faces. So it feels a little unsafe to do that right now. But hopefully one day it will get back on its feet again and find its way to Algonquin territory, because I think that I would love to see it have a life again. Yeah, you bet.
Miigwech. Okay, we got a great question. We have a few great questions, but one of these actually intersects with a question that I was hoping to ask at some point. Excuse me. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask was about your sort of about land-based dramaturgy. You note that throughout the development process and beyond, Bug has been presented on various so while you were developing and then also when you were presenting, you've been on various territories, Coast Salish, Dish with One Spoon, Treaty 7, and of course your own First Nation, Fort William and the Robinson Superior Treaty area. As you know, I've only seen Bug in Dagaranto, Treaty 13, Dish with One Spoon territory. I've seen it several times. I've been vastly privileged. But I was hoping to ask you about your own practices in land-based dramaturgy and how, if or how your presence on other lands affected the process and or the communications of this story. And I'm going to actually add to this another question which has been asked by one of our audience members, who wants to know about, who wants to know if you can tell a story or two about your performances in Alberta, please. So yeah, so.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, Miigwech. I'll answer that first, and then I'll get into the land-based dramaturgy, because being in we had performances in Calgary as part like in Treaty 7 territory in Calgary as part of High Performance Rodeo, and then we traveled to Kainai and did it at the high school. And so it was such an incredible experience. I was so sick. It was January in Alberta, so it was a good time. But it was great because we have such an amazing team. And when we got to the reserve, we went into the high school and we met all of the youth, because I do workshops with Indigenous youth, storytelling workshops with Indigenous youth and women. And at that time, it was just Indigenous youth that we were working with. So doing the workshops with the youth there is one of my favorite memories, because I had them write using a prompt, and I don't know if many of them had done much writing before that. And they wrote these like beautiful like poems, and then it was just watching them recognize their own talents or their own abilities to speak metaphorically about something that they were going through, to speak about their trauma, and they didn't even realize they were doing it. And there was a little bit of like a gobsmack to them that had them recognizing their own abilities. That was really quite beautiful to me. I love working with Indigenous youth. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I try to engage as much as possible whenever I can alongside my stories, because our youth are so important. And they need to know that and understand that as well, because this country sure as hell ain't showing them that. So that's one of my favorite stories. The other great story was that we stayed in the same motel that Jake Gyllenhaal and what's his name? What is the other one? Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal stayed in when they did Brokeback Mountain. We stayed in the same motel, and I was like, this is so cool. But yes, so that was those are my favorite memories, or some stories from Treaty 7. Land-based dramaturgy. It was incredibly important to me as I watched myself grow into that practice, because I was doing it without realizing it at first. And then I did some work with Mohica, and I did some work with Dr. Lindsay LaChance, who both have land-based embodied work and do a lot of focus on that. And I started seeing some of the patterns that I was already doing and some of the things that I wanted to do more of and learn more. And so that looked like, well, spending more time on the land, listening, deep listening to the land. Monique had us put our ear down to the ground. I sat when I was in Newfoundland working on a play, and sat and listened to the birds and to the wind, and just listened and allowed stories to come to me. Those are some, I mean, I offer tobacco, and I sit and I, invite my ancestors in, and it's really, it is a deep practice, and it feels very spiritual, and it feels very ceremonial when I create. And it wasn't always like that. And sometimes, even if it wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't feeling like it was, I think it already was. And I wasn't leaning into it like I am now. So because of the way that I interact with the land, I think, yeah, everywhere we performed it was different. I remember being nervous about being in so-called Victoria, because I knew about the racism there. And I mean, I came from Thunder Bay, so like, I'm used to it, but it's new. So it's a different place. So I didn't know. But when I quieted down the people and focused just on the land, I could really feel it like welcoming me. And there's a quick story I'll share about Victoria, is that we were performing it in, I can't remember the name of the theater, but it used to be a shelter. And so they would have a lot of Indigenous women coming into the shelter, and to come in from the cold and to like get fed, and where the theater is, they would sit and tell stories. I had no idea that that's what this place was. So the first few days that we were performing there, I kept like, the very first performance that I did, I walked out and I felt like my body had been torn open. And it was hard. It was the only time where I felt really knocked off my center performing the show. And we had healers from the Satsum Lalem Society there, who was brushing me down with cedar, and we're like, it's not yours to kill. You're holding stuff that's not yours. They're hitting me with the cedar. And I had to let it all go. And it was a couple of days later when they told us that that space was holding basically the energy of all these Indigenous women that had come through there. And so energy is wild, man, and it stays. So yeah, it shifted everywhere I went. And for me, being back on Fort William First Nation, and being back on Superior Robinson Treaty Territory, to my own land, was incredibly special. And that one will always be probably the standout for me, because it's where the show it takes place, and I wrote it with that land in mind. And so being back on that land and performing it was quite powerful.
Thank you. Before I move on to the next question, there is a question, probably maybe from someone who missed what was said earlier. Yes, Terry, there is a book version of Bug. Do you want to hold it up? There it is, beautiful paperback. So yes, the script is published now, and anyone can get that. Moving on, here's an interesting question. Can you speak, this comes from Rose, can you speak, Yolanda, to the Manadun's character, and why does it always show up in acts titled relating to the colored blue?
Hey, good catch. Yes, so Manadunes was the very first thing that was created for the show. When I sat down to write it, I knew that I wanted to have a creature that was a manifestation of intergenerational trauma and addictions. And I knew I wanted to embody it in a grotesque kind of way. And I knew that I wanted to have it, I wanted it to have a an insidious voice and vocal pattern. And so when I sat down, I sort of just let that come out of me. But one of the things that so my grandparents had a basement floor that was blue cement, or like it was painted blue. And I always, like, I used to have bad dreams about that basement floor, but there was something about the blue basement floor that when I was writing some of the text, I was thinking about myself as a child on that floor. And so blue became this constant return. It was a sort of like a way, it was one of the ways that Manadoons tracks the girl, and is always able to find her. So if she's returning to spots in her memory, whether it's her on her basement floor, or it's, you know, the walls, or it's the doors are blue, that it was a color and a way of connecting to her and coming back to memory, in her memory. So it's almost like a I don't want to use the word totem, that's not the right word, but it's that thing that can that it's like a point of always coming back to, right? A connective point that exists in her memory, and Manadoons knows about it. So Manadoons uses that as an access point to attack. Yeah, and so I the more that I worked on the way in which Manadoons communicates and their journey, the more I started breaking down these different aspects. There's actually a whole thing on Manadoons in the book at the end, called Decoding Manadoons, which talks a lot about each section and why they say the things they say, and what it relates to. And yeah, and each one starts with the color and the access point. So yeah.
Miigwech, Yolanda. Miigwech, Rose, for that question. Excuse me. I'm not sure that I'm seeing this in the chat, and I'm guessing that I am supposed to say it. So, well, we're at 7:47, so we have 13 minutes left approximately of this this event. But we will, as we will end around 8 p.m., but this is being recorded, and it will be available on the Ottawa Public Library's Facebook page if you wish to view it afterwards, particularly if you've missed the beginning. So I have a few more questions here, and then maybe there'll be time to end with one final one from me. Here's an interesting one from Debbie. Do you think, or have you thought, and I'll add this, Debbie didn't say this, but I'll say, or have you thought of creating an online performance of Bug?
Yeah, we actually have.
Ooh.
Yes, we were meant to be in Winnipeg, which is you know, Cree and Métis territory, Anishinaabe territory, doing FemFest in the fall, but of course we weren't able to do that. So we were able to secure some funds to record a version of it in a space. It's not this, I mean, I'll say it's not the same because there is a special quality about being in the space, you know, together. But it was a really beautiful alternative to what we can offer to be in space. We had Jessica Lee Fleming, who is an incredible Métis videographer and artist. She came in to direct it, to direct the video portion of it. And we had two amazing camera operators there, it's a beautiful edit, and so we do, you know, we have offer that to universities, you know, coupled with like workshops and things like that. So it is available. It's tricky to get it all the time because we have to have fun making sure that we're doing our due diligence and like paying our designers royalties and things like that for when it comes to presenting it every time. But it is something that we do have, and it's really beautiful. So I'm really proud of it.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yolanda. Miigwech.
Yeah.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but I think it'd be interesting maybe to come from you and to offer, you know, there may be people who are seeking more clarity. So I think this is referring back to the conversation about, you know, asking white reviewers not to review the show.
Mhm.
And I have a question from Janice who says, do you not think it's a good thing for white people to attend your presentations, particularly if they are there with open hearts? And
So we've never said that white folks can't attend the show. That's a common misconception when it came to this request. What we were specifically requesting was that white reviewers, so journalists who already are there, not review the show. That the media outlets hire Indigenous people or Black people or other artists of color, writers of color, to do those reviews instead, because the balance is off as to who is representative in the media right now. So I welcome everyone to attend anything I ever do. I actually think it's quite important that everybody come and that white folks do see the work and that they engage with the work and that they engage with discussions and have these conversations, because we can't move forward without everyone. So we all have to be able to do that work. And yeah, so you mean, you know, when we did bug at Theatre Passe Muraille, I stood at the door. I welcomed every single person in. I asked them if they needed anything. I seated some elders. You know, it was important for me that every single person that came into that space felt welcome and felt safe. And comfortable, because I'm inviting you as a witness into the space. So it's my job to take care of you. And then you take care of me. So this is when we go back to the basis of care, what I was talking about earlier, and how we hold space for each other, it comes all the way to the performances, right? And so yeah, I've never said that that white folks can attend. Everyone is welcome to attend. Everyone is encouraged to attend with questions and an open heart and like, let's have a conversation. But I don't want you reviewing the show. That's all.
many thanks, Yolanda, and thank you, Janice, for your
Yes.
question. Well, we have a question from Joan, which I'm going to share.
Great.
So this is trauma is intergenerational. But how is it possible to completely heal when still living within a colonial society that was and is still the cause of so much dysfunction and anguish? Joan asks, you cannot really escape it, or can you?
That is a great question. Healing is hard. I mean, healing is hard, period. But healing from intergenerational trauma while you're still feeling the effects of that trauma and the ongoing effects of that trauma is incredibly hard. Everyone's healing journey is different because everyone's perspectives and on life and lens is different. But you know, I've watched people who have been in the depths of despair, who have suffered immensely under addictions caused by intergenerational trauma, caused by, good old fashioned trauma, find their way through that and become healers themselves. I've seen people be in the darkest spots and be able to pull themselves out to get to a point where they're still fighting, but the fight is somehow easier because they're on a healing journey. No, we can't escape it because we live in it, because we are in this wheel, and we didn't ask to be put in this wheel, but we're here and we see it, we know it exists, and we have to keep running because it's the only thing that we can do. But I think it's important. What I'm learning right now is to control the things that I can. And that looks like taking care of my mental health and prioritizing that first. And I think that when we prioritize mental health, our own mental health, and prioritize care and compassion, I'll keep saying that over and over again, that helps make that healing easier, even if it's incrementally easier, even if it's just a little bit easier to get out of bed that day. That's a win, like every day that we survive, every day that we live, every day that we draw breath, especially as Indigenous people, we're winning, because that's not what they wanted from us. And yet here we are. So I think that, yeah, we still have to live in it, but we can choose the ways in which that we live. And it's not always easy. And sometimes we need to go through those periods. One of the things my therapist said today was like, we need to go through those hard times. We need those at that time. Like sometimes the folks with addictions need those addictions. They need those addictions to survive, to get to a point where then they don't need them anymore. And that's not everybody's story, but I take hope in that, and I take comfort in that I know that people have healed from harder points in their life to get to easier points. And so we just have to keep going.
Miigwech, Joan, for your question, and Yolanda, thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful and fulsome and uplifting reminder, right? Reminder of,
we're still here.
yeah. Yeah. I think I'd like to ask a final question here, and it has to do with the future, I guess. About you've mentioned this already, your workshops with the youth, the Oshki Misko Minoe, the Young Red Voices workshops. And you talked about their artistry and their beauty. I wonder if there's anything that you might want to say to us oldsters about what do they dream? What do they seek now? What do they require of us? Those green leaves, right? The aunties and the uncles and the elders that you speak about. What are they asking for from us?
I think they want us to listen, and I think they want to be seen, and validated, which, I mean, I think that's what we all want. Like, I don't think that there's much difference, I think that from what I've seen and experienced, they just want to be heard. Yeah, and seen, I feel like they have so much to say, but they don't know how to say it. and they don't quite have the words yet, some of them. And then there are some of those that are the ones that I would follow, you know, the ones that I would follow anywhere, because they have loud voices and they're putting their bodies on the front lines, and they're defending the land, they're defending the water. The youth are our most important assets, and they deserve to be treated as such. Youth and our elders, there's like such a strong connection between the two that needs to come back, because I think it's been broken or lost along the way, and I'm like very curious to see how we can repair that. Yeah, but they are our future. I think that the youth of today and the babies that are being born right now are the ones who are going to light the eighth fire.
Che Miigwech. This is a note to you, Yolanda. Standing ovation from us. I'm not sure who us is, but some people who are listening. Beautiful, raw, thought-provoking conversation from Yolanda. So, Che Miigwech. It is 8:01. I think we are about to be cut off, whether we will or no. The live stream will just cut out on us. Thank you all for joining us. I remind you again, Yolanda's Bug is in paperback. You can order it. I wonder if I'm maybe speaking out of school, so please forgive me if I am, and that can be corrected on Facebook, but perhaps Yolanda could give information to our hosts that they could post on Facebook about for those of you who may be interested in accessing the online version of Bug. Perhaps there's a way of person to contact or something, and find out how to access for your classes or book club groups or what have you. Che Miigwech is the first time I've ever moderated an online panel. So,
It's so great.
I don't know how to end it, but Miigwech.
Miigwech, everyone, for being here and for spending the night with us. And yeah, feel like you can pick up the book at, I'm pretty sure, any online bookstore. The publishing company Scirocco is also, you can purchase them there. Yeah, and the Ottawa Library also has copies that they're saying as well. So I hope everyone has a great night. Drink lots of water, take care of yourselves, and be kind and compassionate.